Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf and to another tops and flops video for the month of November this time, because it's already December and I haven't wrapped up November yet, at least not in the sense that I've shared with you my tops and flops. For those of you who might be new, at the end of each month or the beginning of the next month, I look back at my reading and I pick a couple of books that I thought were outstanding, tops, or didn't work that well, flops. And November, of course, was nonfiction November, so my tops and flops are nonfiction heavy. And as always, we start with the tops. And within the tops, as always, we start with the book that surprised me the most. And the surprise can be anything. A surprise that I liked a book that I thought would be just, so-so or whatever. And in this particular case, it was definitely the contents of the book that surprised me. And I'm talking about, let me see, Atlas of Poetic Zoology by Emmanuel Puydeba, illustrated by Julie Terrasoni. And I'm saying this because the illustrations are really beautiful, and translated from the French by Eric Butler. That you can see the whole book. The French version was published in 2018 and the English translation in 2019. The author, Emmanuel Puydeba, is a scientist. She works for the French National History Museum Science Institute. And this is a book of 20 or so very short essays, a page, 2 pages, accompanied by illustrations, and each essay is about one particular animal. I read this, by the way, with Heidi from my reading life, and that was good for me because Heidi is a scientist, and she, I'm not a nature person, I'm not a scientist, so it was good to read it with somebody who had more insight and understanding. But why I picked this for the surprise is, even though I'm not a scientist and even though I'm, I don't know much about animals, but I still know that they can be quite amazing and weird. And still, I was surprised by at least 2/3 of the animals that the author describes here. And they are from all walks of life. So it's the very tiny animal, plankton-sized animals to elephant-sized animals, birds, mammals, fish, everything. And it was just, you have a shark that can breed without having sex. So they just, produce young. You have animals that are so tuned into their environment that you can hardly distinguish them from the plants that they feed from or live on. It's just the amazement how inventive nature is and how animals are adapted to their way of life and to their environment. It's just wonderful. It's a perfect gift for Christmas, by the way. I'm going to give this to my mom for Christmas in the German translation. And it's not only for scientists. The way she describes the animal in the essays is not that you need any science background. I don't have any, and I could really, really enjoy this book. So this is my pick for the book that surprised me the most. Next up in the tops is the book that I thought about the most. And for this one, nonfiction, if it's any good, always makes you think, hopefully, expands your horizon. You get to know something that you haven't known before. So it was not that easy to pick a book, and I had a good reading month in November. So it was not that easy to pick a book. Which one did I think about the most? But I eventually chose this one, Against White Feminism by Rafia Zakaria, published earlier this year, because it is about a subject that is very close to my heart. If you follow my channel for any length of time, you know that I read a lot by and about feminism, history of feminism, that I call myself a feminist. So it's a subject that I'm really interested in, and it's also related to the work I do outside of writing, but also my writing life. So I thought this one, yes. Rafia Zakaria was born in Pakistan, but is now living in the US. She is a lawyer, also close to my heart. And I read 2 previous books by her, one shorter essay about the veil, and a memoir about her family in Pakistan. Now, this one is just exactly what the tin says. It critically looks at white feminism and what the problem is with white feminism. And just to not have any misunderstandings, it's not about feminists who happen to be white, like me. It's about a certain attitude that is called white feminism, and is, of course, perpetuated mostly by white people. And it's this idea of not being inclusive, of not looking at intersectionality. And I thought this was really interesting, also confrontational at times for me as a feminist who happens to be white but doesn't want to be a white feminist. So I really learned a lot also about myself and, underlying issues that I didn't even maybe think about. Yeah, so this, and it's not a book. It's not about bashing people or feminists with the white skin. Not at all. If you think that that's what this book does, no, it doesn't. But it explains a lot. And it makes you self-reflect if you're white. And it tells you how things might be improved. So it's a positive book. And I'm still thinking about certain chapters in this book. So if you are interested at all about feminism, and certainly if you are white and you want to know what exactly do we mean when we talk about white feminism, I can highly, highly recommend this book. And then the last category in the tops is the best nonfiction book normally, but because it's all nonfiction, it's just the best book. And again, wasn't easy because many of the books were really, really good, and I could have picked any of the 2 that I just discussed also for the best book. But there was one book that was, if I now say one book that was special, that sort of diminishes the other 2 that I talked about, and that's not the purpose, but I had to pick one, and I picked this one. Rachel Carson, Under the Sea Wind, published in 1941, which I also read with Heidi. This is a modern classic, nature writing, about modern classic if you talk about nature writing. Rachel Carson was a marine biologist, and she wrote about the life of all kinds of creatures close to the sea, in the sea, shore, above, in the air. You can see this is obviously a bird. And it's in various parts where she, for instance, follows one animal for a year. So she tells us the life of that animal for a year. But it's not a scientific or a scholarly essay, I should rather say, about, that bird or fish or what have you. But she imagines being that animal and how that life is. So it's in a way almost fiction, because of course it's fictionalized in a way if you talk about, if you are telling the story from the point of view of a fish or a bird. And it's so delightfully written and so beautiful, but also with so much knowledge and scientific background that it's not just, a sweet story about a bird, a year in the life of a bird. It has scientific value. And this combination of beautiful writing, but also in a way, storytelling. So almost, like I said, fiction, but still scientific, made that I picked this book for the best book that I read in November. It's just wonderful. If you have never read Rachel Carson, please pick her up, and I'm certainly going to pick up her other books. So these were the 3 top reads of November, and on to the flops. And both books I will talk to you about are not horrible books. So I don't have any books that really irked the bloody hell out of me or angered me. I sometimes do, but that's not what happened this month. But there were 2 books that I had the same issue with. And the first one, let's start with the book that makes talking easier, is this one, Nomadland by Jessica Bruder, first published in 2017. This is a still from the movie with Frances McDormand, which I haven't watched yet because I can only access through Amazon in Germany. I can only access the synchronized version, and I'm certainly not going to have Frances McDormand talk to me in German. So I will just wait. Anyway, so Jessica Bruder is a journalist, and this book is about a part of U.S. American society, people who don't have a home, a house, rented or ownership, excuse me, but they live in, you can see it here, they live in a van or an RV, and they travel from seasonal work to seasonal work, and then they travel to Arizona for the winter months because it's warm there and they don't need heating, and it's quite a big group of people who lost, and older people. It's mostly older people, so people who should now be enjoying their pension. And certainly after 2008, the crash, the housing bubble burst, a lot of people lost their home, they lost their pension. The banks didn't lose anything, just saying. And so this is the way they can't afford rent. And so this is the way that they have to live. It's not really a choice, but yeah. Anyway, so the journalist Jessica Bruder, she follows a couple of people. It starts with one particular person called Linda. We get her background information about how she happened to end up as a nomad, and we travel with them, if you will. And the first part of the book was quite good, and then it got really repetitive. The author completely lost focus for some reason, and we still had like 150 pages to go. So what my quarrel or quibble with the book was that the subject was fascinating, and I still learned quite a bit from this book, but the structure was not good, and in my view, maybe it didn't warrant a whole book. It was more something for a long essay, published in The Atlantic or something. And that really, it was not a good book. It was a good topic. I learned something, but the book as such was just not good. She didn't have enough material. She lost focus after the first part. She didn't really know how to tell the rest of the story. So as a book, it was just not a success. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this was also a buddy read. This Nomadland was also a buddy read with Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot. And she had also some criticism about the book, but she definitely liked it better than I did. So I will leave a link to her review down below so that you can get, a more balanced picture. And I had more or less the same issues with the other book in the flops, and that is Gemma Hartley, Fed Up, published in 2018. Gemma Hartley is a US American journalist, and she works for a freelancer. She lives in Nevada, and she published an essay in Harper's Bazaar that went viral about the additional labor that women do. She calls it emotional labor, in a relationship, that even if you divide the tasks, women are still mostly the ones who are responsible for the management. They manage the emotions of the family members. They manage the calendar. They are responsible for thinking about, the brother-in-law's birthday gift, stuff like that. And from that article that went viral, she produced a book called Fed Up. And it's interesting, the topic. I mean, let's first back up and talk about the term emotional labor, because originally what it means is the labor that is not physical or mental labor with your job, but emotional labor. For instance, if you are a nurse or a doctor, the treatment is the physical labor, but you are also supposed to, be empathetic, listen to the patient, give the idea of emotional support, and that is what is called emotional labor. At least that's what some social behaviorists or sociologists call emotional labor. Gemma Hartley expands, like many others, by the way, expands that term to mean if you make the calendar for your family, that is actual labor. But she talks about this as emotional labor because it involves the emotion that you are the one responsible for the functioning of the relationship and the family and how it runs, and that you also manage the emotions of others so that they are not disappointed, that you are listening to them, just to make it clear what this book is about. And I think it's really interesting. It's an interesting topic, and a lot of women, especially straight women in a heterosexual relationship, struggle with this issue, that even if he does the dishes and she does the cooking, there is still this idea, I'm doing more in this relationship. But exactly like with Nomadland, this was a good essay, but not a good book, because it was repetitive. She said the same things over and over and over and over again in just a little bit different wording. There was an arc, because she talks about how she, in her own relationship, got to manage this better together with her partner, her husband. But it was just 50 pages worth of good information, and the other 150 was just repetition. And that makes it a very good and interesting subject, but not a good book, at least not in my opinion. Anyway, these were the tops and flops for the month of November. There will be no tops and flops for December, most likely, because I'm going to do the 2021 tops and flops instead. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I'm very much looking forward to your comments, and I'll see you all soon in the next one.